I'm Marc Radomsky. I'm a filmmaker here based in Sydney, and I'm really pleased and honored to be speaking with Angus Gibson, who's the director of Back of the Moon, the film that you've just watched. Angus.
And I'm very pleased that you've just watched Back of the Moon. I'm based in Johannesburg. I have a company here that makes documentaries, does museum work, and does an enormous amount of local television drama. So this was kind of a curious sort of step to the side to do a feature.
But I think maybe we could talk a little bit, just give a little bit of a background so people have a context. And first of all, congratulations. It's really a wonderful film. I'm sure people who've just seen it will agree. And maybe, you were my mentor in the first film that I ever made when, you're part of this company, Free Filmmakers, that I was lucky enough to be invited in to join. And we were lucky enough to work on your Oscar-nominated documentary, Mandela. And so Free Filmmakers made a lot of documentaries, as you said, and mostly at the time we were working mostly for international kind of networks because it was very difficult it was still apartheid. It was very difficult to make films under apartheid for local television. And you made a film called Freedom Square and Back of the Moon, which is a documentary about Sophiatown, right? And in a sense, I guess it's a precursor to this feature film we've just watched, Back of the Moon. And I just wanted to talk about the fact, there was some criticism about that film that was kind of romanticized in a way, or that the gangsters in the film were portrayed as the good guys, and there was a kind of glossing over of the gritty nature of what was happening in Sophiatown. And I was curious whether making Back of the Moon now kind of desire to redress those criticisms in a way.
In a way, yes, it was. At the time, it was the historians that said to me, Sophiatown was a really tough place, and there was a lot of violence in the space, and we had kind of not addressed that, and that the gangs were indeed scourges in the community. They weren't heroic figures. So to an extent, that is what that is about. It was about addressing that. And it also has to be said that I really wanted to make I've always been interested in the gangster genre. I wanted to make a gangster film. And in fact, the film started out being about Eve, who is the sort of torch singer in the piece. And it was going to be a revenge narrative in which she avenges herself against the people that had taken her on a sort of pretty awful weekend. And somehow the relationship between Eve and Badman sort of got under my skin, and then it became the film that it is, which is a sort of a combination of a gangster narrative and a love story. And I suppose, the thing about Johannesburg is I think of it on the one hand as a very warm, vibrant city. And on the other hand, I think of it as brutal. And I suppose I was interested in something where both of those things were up against each other.
I saw something where you said it was kind of like the beautiful and the bad together, and you sort of had a fear that they'd cancel each other out.
Well, that was my fear. So what happened was I was in the middle of a whole lot of projects when we made this. We shot it in 3 weeks, and then I didn't look at it for 2 years. And while it sat there on the shelf, my fear was that because of the brutality of some of the film, that I would not be moved by the love story. And in fact, it was only when Megan and I had done a cut 2 years later that I sat and watched it through, and I thought, no, indeed, I am moved by this love story, and I can like this film. That was certainly a fear.
So you said at the beginning some sort of strange circumstances around the making of the film. Let's talk a little bit about that and some of the challenges.
Well, so we had proposed a drama series, which was for local South African television, which was about a production company making a film in Sophiatown. And for that, we built these really beautiful sets, and we got beautiful wardrobe, and it was quite an experimental piece. And it was playing at 7:30 in the evening, and it absolutely died. The audience could not cope with these two concurrent worlds, the world of the production company and the world in the past. And so it came to, we still shot about 100 episodes, but then it came to an end. And we had these beautiful sets and this beautiful wardrobe, which were about to be torn down. And it was Christmas time, and it was a kind of, we said to all the directors in the company, come up with something. Let's shoot something quickly before we tear everything down. And I went to the beach, and I walked up and down the beach, and I came up with this particular narrative. And I got back, and nobody else had come up with anything. So we said, okay, well, let's do this one. And we shot it in 3 weeks. We borrowed a red camera from a friend and lots of favors, and that's how it got made.
So 3 weeks, I mean, that's definitely out of your comfort zone, I guess.
It is.
You're a very kind of considered and deliberate and like a real craftsman and deeply thinking about everything that you do, as I recall. So, and you've always called yourself a slow operator. You told me that right at the very beginning. And I was,
I remain that.
I was trying to rush forward. So that's, I mean, when you look at the film, it doesn't look like 3 weeks, and it doesn't look like there was any compromise, to the production value, which is a real testament, really. How many takes did you get on each scene? Or
I would very seldom do more than 3. So it was, we've been making television drama. So I have a crew with a real understanding the muscle of making things quickly. And when I'd written it, my real fear was this, there are a lot of kind of fights. There are kind of action scenes, and I thought, wait, those are going to trip us up. But the actors kind of were so invested and kind of threw themselves into those fights with the most astonishingly athletic kind of ability. And I sort of stood on the sidelines, terrified that they were going to really hurt each other. And we somehow survived those fights. And otherwise, it was mainly shot at night, and it was freezing cold. But it was kind of made with a group of actors that were loving making the film, and a crew that really enjoyed the process. And the one night we literally, we had started in the middle of the day the one day, and we went to dawn the next morning. So, there were long stretches. But it was, I don't feel compromised by it. I mean, I'm sure if I had had more time, perhaps scenes would have been different and more beautiful, but I don't look at it and think, oh my God, I wish that scene wasn't like that.
Yeah, and we're looking at don't see any of that at all. You know that the fight scenes, if we do something here, there's so much restriction, and you have to have, you know, to hold a gun on set, you literally got to have an armorer, and he's not only got to hand you the gun, like after showing you and teaching you and making you take out any of the fake bullets and the only fake bullets. There's a whole like sort of red tape process down here. And I remember we didn't kind of have that when I was in South Africa making films. I'm just wondering, has that changed?
No, we have it now.
You have to have it all?
We do have it now. So no, with the guns, there's the armor and all of that. But a lot of it was kind of fist fights, and that kind of thing was stabbing, and there was sort of a lot of physicality in it. And we shot those extraordinarily quickly. And that's a testament. That's a testament to the actors.
How many cameras?
One.
The whole film. That's unbelievable. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of your cast, your incredible cast, like even Some. So Monet Moshesh. I mean, I was struck by how much she kind of looks a bit like Miriam Makeba, like her physicality. She kind of looks like Miriam.
Right.
And was that part of casting her, aside from her incredible talent and presence?
So, you know, she's a singer. She's not an actor. And we had used her in... So we'd use all that cast in the television series that didn't work, right?
Right.
So they were all people that I love working with. And in fact, the only reason the film really got made was because the cast kind of pushed me to make it. Because I read it and I thought, oh my goodness, it's very bleak. It's kind of, it's a dark piece. And I thought, is this the moment to be making a dark film like this? And so I stepped back from it, but they were all so gung-ho and so wanted to do it that we made it. But Manoa had, her first acting had been on that television series, and she was a support role. And there was just something so wonderful about her, and she has such a beautiful voice that it just seemed like the obvious cast. And Richard, who plays Badman, had played this extraordinarily eccentric Congolese character on the television series, which was truly a great creation. And his character died very quickly, and I thought, here's a person I really want to work with. And he really wanted to work with me, and so, and they were all kind of involved in the writing of the script. You know, they got drafts of it as it went. So it was a very collaborative process.
And, you know, last year in our inaugural festival, we showed also Harriet Gafshan, who was also one of our partners in Free Filmmakers, and Robbie Thorpe, who we worked with a lot. We showed their film Beyond the River, which is about the Duzi Marathon. And, you know, Lemochang Tsipa, who plays Ghost in your film, in Back of the Moon, like he plays this sort of petty kind of criminal who ends up kind of getting into this Duzi thing, and he's the good guy, and it's this whole kind of triumphant story, you know, feel-good story. And in this film, he's like one of the most restrained, chilling and scary performances of a gangster I think I've ever seen on screen. I mean, I thought he was just incredible.
He is incredible. So curiously, I wrote that role for somebody else. I had this camera available in only these few weeks, and the person that I wrote the role for was not available. And he was quite a lot older than Lemochang, and was known as a sort of a dark actor. And Lemochang essentially is thought of as a, you know, this his reputation was of doing good guys. And I had met with him, and I was really interested in him as a director. You know, I was interested in directing him, and I said to him, you know, I'm sure you can play dark. And he said, I'd love to. And I said to everybody, I think Lemogang should do the role. And everybody was kind of half-hearted about my decision, but I was clear that I wanted him. And I just love him in the role. You know, it wasn't for a moment that I thought, oh, it would have been better if the original actor, who is fantastic as well, was there. No, I mean, I just love Lemogang.
So South African film is, you know, when I am looking at the films, even for a festival like this, I feel a deep sense of nostalgia, and I guess a touch of regret in a way. You know, I just always wonder what would have happened had we not left and had I stayed in South Africa. And over the last 20 years, you know, how the industry has shifted. Well, how do you feel it's going? You said now under the COVID times it's kind of tough, but is that because of COVID? Or certainly there seems to be a real energy and a real attempt at telling these kinds of stories. And we've got a film called Knuckle City in this festival, which is just an amazing film. So there seemed, and Jenna Bass's Flatland, and some really kind of edgy films. And there seems to be a lot of that energy, which is what I miss, you know, which is really great. Here it's a lot more risk averse and restrained and kind of quite difficult, where there you seem to be able to do stuff almost in the way they do in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's interesting things happening here. I mean, have you seen Morphe?
Haven't seen Morphe, no. We were trying to get it, but we haven't seen it.
It's extraordinary film. And Knuckle City, I mean, you know, Jamil has done a bunch of really interesting projects. And, you know, he's very much mainly he's making feature films, whereas I'm doing other things. This was kind of an aside. And there are emerging talents. I mean, working in our company, there are people that I'm really excited to see what kind of features they would do. You know, so there is a kind of a really interesting energy.
Off the back of South Africa, the country now, you know, off the back of Zuma Gate and that whole Gupta thing, which is kind of gobsmacking. How do you see things going now? Do you feel hopeful? What are you thinking about where South Africa's going?
I mean, I'm very worried about the pandemic. You know, I mean, I'm in a very comfortable situation. You know, I have a house and a garden, and you know, I'm in lockdown, but I can hardly complain. But there are people out there without food, and it's the start of the process. And winter is coming, so I really worry about the economic fallout and a kind of desperation around the pandemic in this country. I think that so far the government has done very well in containing it, but we kind of, it is starting to get cold, and I think that there's a spike still coming. So I'm certainly worried about that, and I'm worried about the economic fallout. You know, we already have very big unemployment, and I fear that will increase. So that is a real concern. You know, the quality of my life remains incredibly good. I love being in Johannesburg. I have many relationships with many different people, both working relationships and, you know, that make my life experience a very rich one. And I do documentary as well, so I feel quite deeply engaged with the society, and it is an extraordinarily challenging and interesting society. I don't know quite what to make of the government. I think Ramaphosa has been a fine leader in this period of the virus, but it does feel like a divided leading party, and I'm not sure what to make of it. So I'm giving you a tentative answer because that's how I feel. But I'm very happy to be here right now.
I mean, it's interesting, in Back of the Moon and Sophiatown, obviously the ANC back then was kind of criticized for not doing enough about the protest against the removals in a way. So it's almost like a full circle in some ways.
That's right.
So,
I mean, yeah, there's criticism of the party in the film, which of course, I mean, Zuma was in power when I made the film.
Yeah.
And I think he's done a lot of damage to the country.
So last question maybe then is just, you've talked a little bit about how ultimately the themes of Back of the Moon relate in some way to loss. And you connected that to a much bigger tapestry of loss of talent, and I suppose that comes back to the notion of exiles, and people having to leave, like Miriam had to leave, and Hugh Masekela, and everyone left around the time of Sophiatown, around the time of Back of the Moon. And I even made a film when I left South Africa called Choosing Exile, as a kind of irony of us deciding to leave when the exiles were coming back, So just could you talk a little bit about that sense of loss of talent, or loss, I suppose, as a theme in Back of the Moon?
I suppose Max, I mean, the main male character, I kind of was definitely a little in love with that character. And for me, he represented a whole slew of people that could have done great things and simply were shut down. They didn't have the opportunity, and they made other choices. But, a thing that I suppose is very stark as a filmmaker in this country is I'm approached almost every day by young people who are looking for opportunity. And I come across people with extraordinary talent. And my big fear is, will you ever get an opportunity? I can tell you there are people who I've sort of noted as greatly talented and thought, I've got to find a way to give them an opportunity. And then I've heard that they have died, literally, it's sort of, and I suppose, that is my constant experience as a filmmaker in this country right now. But if you were to take it back to that apartheid era, it's sort of, there's this ghastly sense of all those people with all that talent and all that promise that were kind of shut down. And those that went into exile kind of escaped it, but that was a very particular life. Look, there's no doubt that today in this country, we face the effects of those years. The education remains a very, very problematic area. And the divisions, the economic divisions just remain vast and terrifying. But still, there's a great spirit. And I suppose it's that sort of duality that I love. And in a way, that's what the film's about.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you. It's just great to see you again after all this time. But, this festival of ours, we're doing our little bit to, help support a school in Belleville South. And do what we can for the students of that school. So it's amazing to have your film in our festival. And thank you very much, and congratulations again.
So good to talk, Mark.